Solange Mougin joins me now on the set for today's press review. Hi, Solange.
Hi, Jean.
Lots of coverage in the press about that shocking report out of France that some 300,000 people were victims of child sex abuse at the hands of the French Catholic Church.
Yeah, and for France's Catholic paper, La Croix, disaster is before our eyes. How can, the paper asks, one not feel the pain, disgust, revolt, and shame over the abuse? It calls on all Catholics, actually, to look at this truth and face it without trembling, they say. La Croix also adds that French cardinals, their request for a pardon, their request for forgiveness was necessary, but more must be done, they say, in the months and in the coming years. Now, for L'Opinion, the Commission's report, led by Jean-Marc Sauvé, is like an explosion that has sent shockwaves across the nation and the Church. There should be zero tolerance, they say, for such abuse. And for the paper's illustrator, CAC, the shocking scope of this systemic abuse has dethroned in his cartoon Jesus Christ in favor of the Commission's precedent taking his place.
So you talk about the zero tolerance. The French papers are also looking at what can be done so that this kind of thing never does happen again.
Yeah, and for Le Parisien, the first step should be to allow priests in the clergy to marry. An end of celibacy, the paper writes, would help part of the problem. And so could giving women the possibility of becoming leaders within the Church, the paper says. And for one of the sociologists, actually, that was part of the 2.5-year investigation, the absence of women in power in the Church is a major piece of the puzzle. For Le Monde, Nathalie Bajos explains in an interview that the Church is a perfect looking glass, she says, of male dominance. And systems or institutions that support so much male dominance allow for her and encourage such sexual violence.
Solange, you've also been looking at the situation in Taiwan, where military tensions with China are at their worst in 40 years.
Yeah, and as we can see with the Taipei Times, there's an increasing concern over the close to 150 Chinese Air Force planes that flew over Taiwanese airspace in the past week. Something it notes is proof of, quote, the clear destabilizing activities by the hands of China. Now, Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen, she has penned actually a plea in Foreign Affairs calling on global powers to help push back these military threats from China and to maintain democracy on the island. Now, she writes that if Taiwan were to fall to Beijing, authoritarianism, she said, would have the upper hand globally over democracy. Now, in direct response to this opinion piece, China's Global Times says President Xi was turning to her masters, they say, for help. Now, the Beijing-backed paper lambasts her as, quote-unquote, a democracy cultist that has bitten off more than she can chew.
Also this week, Facebook's been having a pretty rough time of it. There was that outage, of course, a few days ago, and then damning testimony before Congress. And the American press is really still talking a lot about what this could mean for the social media giant.
Yeah, Facebook is definitely and increasingly in the hot seat amidst the American press. NPR is focusing on whistleblower Frances Haugen's testifying that Facebook knows that its services, like Instagram, can pose a serious risk to the mental health of children and teens, as they spend hours a day potentially comparing themselves to others on the Instagram site. Now, Instagram's ability to create a sort of unrealistic view of beauty and of lifestyle standards is also the subject of a cartoon today in the Washington Post. It's by Michael de Adder, and it's entitled Instashaming, and he has a little girl running that you see there through a maze of cell phones that send hurtful messages like, I hate you and you're ugly. Now, with this massive amount of coverage and criticism, the papers are increasingly saying that there is a need to regulate Facebook, and that is, the papers are saying, gaining traction.
Finally, Solange, just to wrap up, something completely different. You found a few articles about clowns.
Yes, the first two are a bit sad, though. The Times of London tells us about the latest UK shortage, you guessed it, of clowns in Northern Ireland. The paper notes that this shortage is not due to Brexit, they say, but rather a prolonged shutdown of the circus industry in Northern Ireland because of COVID. And as Forbes tells us, the clowns literally went south to Europe, where circuses were open in many countries, or actually to their countries of origin to return home to wait it out. But now, and this is where Brexit does enter the picture, getting visas back to the UK is proving difficult. I couldn't end you on that, on shortages, so let's take a look at the Daily Mail. They say that, according to a Turkish study, being a class clown is actually a sign of a greater IQ. And the study found that the funnier the jokes, the higher the children's IQ.
That's good to know. Thank you for that, Solange Moujon there. With that, a look at the press review today. You can always get a closer look at it, of course, if you like, on our website. The address is france24.com.